Okay, so since LaRue jumped ship and forced his way into the Nocturne video, it's just gonna have to be you and me for the Strange Journey video.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
I originally planned to have only the SMT1, Strange Journey, and 4 videos have 2 guest stars, since, you know, those are the only ones with a Law and Chaos hero, but that kinda got derailed pretty quickly. Sorry if this might lead to much more work for both of us.
I mean, it did, but don't worry, I can handle the work.
Cool, man, thanks.
Hello, what are you guys doing?
Atlus USAWest, get out of here! I've kept you out of this series so far, and I'm not letting you in now!
I was in the first video, you know?
Yeah, in the background, and it was only because I wasn't paying attention.
Macca, you care to explain who that is for those who don't know?
My poor attempt at a supporting character. Now can you please leave? Rtyuiope and I are trying to cover Strange Journey.
Strange Journey? Oh. Can I help you guys cover it?
Why'd you freak out? You know Atlus USAWest was played by Lewis from the Gemchel.
Yeah, but he was never supposed to come to life and move around, and I just...
Well, now that he's gone, I mean, I don't see an issue with you helping us out.
Awesome! Hey, Macca.
The Nintendo DS. Not only is it Nintendo's best-selling system, but it's also fondly remembered by many people as the RPG machine of the 2000s. Whether it be ports or remakes of all-time classics or original titles, you were not hard-pressed to find phenomenal titles you could sink your teeth into for upwards of 100 hours at a time. But what about Atlus? What was their DS output like? With so many hugely successful titles on the thing, when was Atlus going to put out a game to rival the titans that were Mario and Luigi, the Final Fantasy IV remake, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, and the plethora of other games that were soon to release on the system? Well, the good news is they already beat all of those games not just to market, but also in quality, with Trauma Center under the knife, not even a year into the system's lifecycle. But what about role-playing games? Atlus is known for their RPGs after all. Well, that wouldn't come until 2007 in the form of Etrian Odyssey.
Etrian Odyssey was a collaborative effort between Atlus and the developer Landcars. It was a first-person dungeon crawler in the vein of classic Megaten titles, though it has nothing to do with the franchise outside the dungeon crawling gameplay and the occasional reference. Since its release in 2007, Etrian Odyssey has gone on to spawn 6 mainline entries, 2 remakes, and 2 mystery dungeon spin-offs. While this might sound like another red herring we're forcing into the script for some kind of running joke that I'm totally not reading right now, Etrian Odyssey is actually integral to what we're really here to talk about. Shin Megami Tensei, Strange Journey.
Released all the way back in the mythical year of 2009, Strange Journey was the first mainline entry in SMT that wasn't a re-release since Nocturne 6 years prior. While series head Koji Okada had left Atlus by this game's release, Kazuma Kaneko was still present during the development and was a driving creative force behind the game. Both him and director Eiji Ishido worked together with Landcars to create the game using the Etrian Odyssey engine as a base. The idea to make a handheld SMT game came when Atlus staff talked about creating a large-scale role-playing game that would make use of a smaller development team. Kaneko was the one to suggest that they make it into an SMT game for the Nintendo DS, with the reasoning behind the platform of choice being Etrian Odyssey's success, as well as the ability for the player to end their session whenever they needed to. The team decided to design the game with an overseas release in mind, leading to the game's story and setting differing vastly from previous entries. They drew inspiration from various Western films such as John Carpenter's 1982 film, The Thing. Rather than an all-Japanese cast like previous games, it was decided that the cast would be multicultural. To enable this, they set the game in Antarctica with a threat that would affect things on a global scale. From here, the cast became a military squad made up of soldiers from all around the world. Asian, European, North American, Hispanic, Japanese, white, black, etc. Also, unlike previous entries in the series, there was a greater focus on sci-fi elements instead of the usual occult or post-apocalyptic ones.
The combat would be brand new, foregoing the press turn system introduced in Nocturne in favor of a new, more easily accessible one. Fusion was revamped to make it faster paced and allow for more experimentation. Because you were exploring an unknown world, a special suit known as the Demonica was designed with the idea of exploring this strange and dangerous place. The game was of such a high quality, it was even suggested it should become the 4th mainline entry in the franchise. And upon release in 2009 and 2010 for Japan and North America respectively, the game was met with very positive critical reception. It was then, 8 years later, the game was re-released on the Nintendo 3DS to celebrate the franchise's 25th anniversary in the form of Shin Megami Tensei Deep Strange Journey, or Strange Journey Redux as it's known in the West. This enhanced version contained new content and multiple quality of life changes, such as Japanese-only voice acting, a new art style, new demon designs by current series artist Masayuki Doi, updated visuals, difficulty modes, faster battles, sprinting, skill selection during fusion, a field save, and a new dungeon revolving around the new character Alex. Because no Atlus Enhanced re-release is complete without a brand new waifu.
Strange Journey begins with a montage showcasing the world. Earth is a planet. Yeah, last time I checked, it is a planet. One inhabited by humans. In fact, there's almost too many of them. But the focus of the plot is in the areas where these people live, but rather in an area only a scant few do, Antarctica. Out of nowhere, a small black void stretching infinitely high into the sky appears. Before any research into it can be done, it begins to expand, rapidly, consuming everything in its path. Anything and anyone caught inside is lost. The UN sends unnamed probes into the Schwarzbelt, but even the ones that make it are quickly lost. The pictures sent back baffle the scientists. A blazing village, a gaudy red light district, a seemingly infinite shopping mall, and a massive collection of garbage. Meanwhile, rioting and crime sweeps the world as people react to the encroaching black hole. To put an end to this, the UN puts together a special investigation force made up of the best scientists and soldiers the world has to offer, and equips them with the most technologically advanced suits to allow them to explore and survive in the void. The Demonica. As the 4 ships, the Red Sprite, Blue Jet, Elf, and Gigantic enter the Schwarzbelt, the crews lose contact with each other and the outside world. The members of the Red Sprite find themselves in an ice cavern, but before they can do anything, they are attacked by strange creatures they later come to know as demons. From here, the members of the Red Sprite attempt to survive the Schwarzbelt in an attempt to return home, and maybe, just maybe, destroy it before it can envelop the Earth.
Does anyone remember that one movie, Annihilation? Think that, but like 8 to 9 years prior. Oh hey, I have a Blu-ray copy of Annihilation. I wonder if I have any plans for this. You play as a nameless member of the Red Sprite strike team who, depending on whether you play the original Japanese or localized versions, is either from Japan or America. Unlike previous protagonists, the player character in Strange Journey has no official name outside of just protagonist. Because of this, many fans have come to refer to him as Doom Guy. For my playthrough of the vanilla Strange Journey, I named him Just a Guy, seeing as his name in the drama CD, Tadano Hitonari, translates to just an ordinary person. As for my playthrough of Redux, I named him Lucky Ted. If you get that reference, then I'll bake you a cookie or something.
Other major characters include ones like my favorite, Commander Gore, an American soldier tasked with leading the Schwarzwelt investigation team. Jimenez, a Hispanic private contractor with an American military background who joins the Blue Jet as a member of the strike team. Zelenin, a Russian scientist known for her field-leading studies on the Schwarzwelt, who joined the Elves research team. And of course, Arthur, the commanding unit for the Red Sprite, who acts as a second-in-command to Gore, and who, despite being named after the author of 2001: A Space Odyssey, is actually 100% on humanity's side.
However, those you enter the Schwarzbelt with aren't the only ones you'll be coming across. You'll also find a monkey named Bugaboo who was the subject of torture at the hands of other demons. An angel named Mastema who claims to be carrying out God's orders in the Schwarzwelt by assisting you. 3 figures named the 3 wise men who present themselves as humanity's saviors. And a strange girl named Luisa who appears and disappears at random, content with simply watching your team struggle.
But we're not done with the cast just yet, as we still need to talk about Redux's exclusive character and brand new waifu, Alex. Alex first appears in the second dungeon and then proceeds to kill you. However, you wake up in a new area dubbed the Womb of Grief. By completing the Womb of Grief, you further Alex's plot and gain access to new versions of the Law, Chaos, and Neutral endings. Speaking of endings, it's time we talk about the alignment system again. After Nocturne replaced alignments for the Reason system, Strange Journey decided to act as a throwback by throwing out reasons and going back to alignments. No twists or turns, just the classic Law, Chaos, and Neutral, this time represented by Zelenin, Jimenez, and Gore respectively.
Strange Journey continues its nature as a throwback title by returning to the first-person grid-based dungeon crawling of the first 3 games, and, for the most part, plays the same. Controls are the same but with smoother movement, the moon phase system is retained, and battles are still random. However, what helps the game stand out, both in exploration and battle, is the Demonica, and the various systems tied to it. The best place to start is probably the app system. The app system is broken into 2 parts, sub-apps and main apps. Sub-apps offer passive effects that can improve aspects of your Demonica or simply change it. Examples would include the enemy Be Gone, which lowers the enemy encounter rate slightly, and Gibo Eyes, which shows the enemy's affinities. Main apps, on the other hand, enhance the player's ability to explore. Phase Shifter allows you to change the layout of certain parts of the map, while Enemy Search lets you fight invisible enemies. In the original DS version, you have a limited amount of space to equip sub-apps, as each has a certain size. In Redux, you can equip as many sub-apps as you want, so long as they don't conflict with each other.
The most important main app, however, will be the Forma search, which allows you to find, well, Forma in the environment. But what's Forma, you may ask? Well, Forma is a substance found only in the Schwarzwelt and can be used to develop equipment, items, and apps. Forma is incredibly useful from a player point of view and from a gameplay design perspective. As you move, any tile that the raider moves over has a chance of revealing Forma. The great thing about this is that it doesn't have to be on a tile that you already visited. When a piece of Forma is revealed to be floating on a seemingly empty spot, that tells the player there is more to the level than what meets the eye. Forma naturally guides and encourages the player to explore simply due to how useful it is.
Now then, let's talk about combat. One of the reasons Nocturne is so important for Megaton as a whole is due to its introduction of the press turn system, which would work its way into every subsequent entry in the franchise in some way, whether it be the One More system of Persona or the unnamed system of Devil Survivor. Seeing as Strange Journey was the first mainline title since SMT3, Atlus decided to say fuck it and throw the whole thing out. In its place, we have Demon Co-op. So, you know how in past SMT games your alignment factored into gameplay by limiting what demons you could summon and what equipment you could equip? Well, Demon Co-op is like the opposite of that. By exploiting an enemy's weakness, any demons you have summoned that are of the same alignment as you will follow up with an unblockable attack of their own that ignores any resistances. Play things smart and you can get a total of 16 hits in one turn. It rewards you for having a team based around your alignment instead of limiting you for picking sides.
Did you think we were done with the gameplay? Nah, there's still 2 more very important systems we gotta talk about. Let's talk about analysis levels and demon sources. When you encounter a demon, they will come in as nothing more than digital noise. Upon killing it, your analysis for that demon reaches level 1, allowing you to identify the demon and communicate with it. You can increase your analysis level by fighting it over and over. Hitting level 3 will reward you with that demon's D-Source upon their next level up. A D-Source allows you to install a set of moves onto the demon you are fusing. For example, by gaining Thought's D-Source, you can give any demon you fuse Debilitate, a super useful skill. Then you have the other side of the coin. Vivian's D-Source has Luster Candy, an SMT player's best friend. It's me, I'm SMT player. The coolest, most underrated feature in Strange Journey is easily demon passwords. So you know how in Pokemon they make a point of trading creatures with your friends, as well as carrying them out into other games? Well, this is Atlus's clunky answer to it. By entering a very long code into your demon compendium, you can effectively transfer a specific demon into other people's games. You have a level
12
Jack Frost with Ceodine, Luster Candy, Tetraja, and many other great skills, as well as just 1 point on every stat?
except for luck, which is an unnatural 99.
Share it with your friends, and even yourself in future playthroughs if you save the code.
So, let's say we already sold you on this game, and you're looking for a copy to play as we speak. The first thing you're probably going to notice is the price of the game, as it's pretty up there for a game that's only a decade old at this point. But the second thing you will be likely to notice is that there are 2 versions of the game, one on the DS and the other on 3DS. As Macca said earlier, Strange Journey was given an enhanced re-release to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the mainline series, and with it came probably the most changes of any enhanced re-release of an SMT game to date. Strange Journey Redux is actually so different, in fact, that we feel the need to talk about what separates them so much, but also why you might actually prefer to play the original DS version instead. The biggest addition comes in the form of a new character named Alex, whom, as previously stated, shows up in the second dungeon and promptly kills you. Afterward, you are taken to the new dungeon known as the Womb of Grief. There you are revived by Demeter, the Greek harvest goddess and mother of Persephone.
Why is the Greek goddess of the harvest and mother of Persephone a little girl?
Look, each floor of the Womb of Grief roughly corresponds in difficulty to each pre-existing dungeon in the game, likely meaning that you'll be returning here in between dungeons to get further and further into the new plot, that by completing the Womb, will unlock new versions of the Law, Chaos, and Neutral endings.
Other changes and new additions include animated cutscenes, revamped UI, Japanese-only voice acting, new EX missions, updated visuals, various quality of life changes such as sprinting, the introduction of difficulty modes, field saves, demons just giving you their demon source upon hitting analysis level 3, a bunch of new sub-apps, a brand new app type altogether called command skills, and portraits for not just the core cast of characters, but every character in the game. And it's with this, the biggest elephant in the room rears its ugly head. The change in art style. Leading up to release, this was easily the most contentious aspect, and it still is to this day. There's a reason for it, but it's kinda long, so I'm just gonna give you the short answer. Kazuma Kaneko is no longer involved with game development at Atlus, so they got the Atlus design team to just redo it all. While characters like Zelenin come out looking pretty alright outside of a newly broken arm, others like Jimenez look drastically different. And frankly, this new art style is just too generic for a lot of people. It can also alter the mood of the game. Kaneko's art was cold and serious, lending a more Western feel to a game that was created with an international audience in mind, while the new art style makes it look like any other Japanese anime RPG. This isn't the only part of Redux people take issue with. A few think the new endings clash thematically or that they're just bad. Others think Atlus went overboard with the quality of life additions, that it changes the tone of the gameplay. And some think that the balancing is straight up ruined, making the game easier than the original even on the harder difficulties. I could go further about the various changes made to the game, but the script is already as long as the script for the If video, and we still haven't gotten into the personal opinions yet. If you want to know more about the differences, do some research and make the decision yourself. You're a grown adult. I hope.
So, like, is Atlus USAWest dead?
I don't know?
Okay, boys, what'd you think of the game?
Well,
So I've played this game 3 times. First in 2018 when Redux released, again with the DS version for this video, and immediately following that up by playing Redux again. I remember really loving the game the first time I played it, but playing through it again really cemented my feelings. The setup is fantastic and easily my favorite in any SMT game. The Swordsfeld and the multicultural sci-fi military aesthetic is great. Hell, I'd go as far as to say the story of Strange Journey is the best in the series. While it isn't super complex or layered, the themes of the game and the various plot twists kept me invested throughout. When I first played it all those years ago, I was concerned about having a continuous cast of characters, because they'd be traveling with you everywhere, and it would lead to the game losing that feeling of isolation I know SMT for. But thankfully, it's able to retain that feeling despite it. What helps is its cast being made up of exclusively adults with tons of life experiences, so when things go south, you know things are bad. The music is also great, easily being the most unique soundtrack Shoji Meguro has ever made. The use of horns, classical string instruments, and the frequent use of chanting gives the game a constant feeling of epicness and intimidation. As for the gameplay, this is the single best classic-styled SMT game. The dungeons are expertly designed and are tons of fun. Real quick, for everyone who's played this game before, Sector Eridanus isn't that bad. The teleporter maze isn't that bad. There's way more annoying sections in the game. Exploration is the best this style of game could be, only missing a few quality of life features in the DS version that was added in Redux. Demon sources are fantastic as it makes building demons so much more satisfying. Plus, it encourages you to constantly be switching up your party so you can level up their analysis level, which, in turn, ties back into Demon Co-op. Your party's alignment makeup is so important as Demon Co-op is incredibly useful. It's not as satisfying as Press Turn, though. It feels less strategic as it ultimately equates to the one attack just doing more damage. The intro is also longer than I would like, taking around an hour to get to proper gameplay. It's not as bad as modern Persona games, though. While I think all of the supporting cast is great, the core cast of characters are pretty weak. Not enough time is really spent developing Zelenin, Gore, and Jimenez. Zelenin feels like she goes from researcher to follower of God way too easily. Gore is pretty static throughout, and while the best of the three, Jimenez just feels edgy by the end without much substance to him. The pacing is also wonky in the beginning of the latter half. You keep getting dragged out of dungeons to deal with story stuff that, while great and lead to the second time in the series I was left sitting there struggling to decide what to do, just gets annoying. And lastly, while I think the music is incredibly unique, it's also very samey. There are memorable tracks, but I honest to God can't differentiate any of the dungeon themes. Only one I can tell you is Eridanus, and that's because it's just very pretty. But what about Redux? Well, I'll keep it brief. Is the art style worse? Yes. Is the game easier even on the harder difficulties? Yes. Did they go overboard with the quality of life stuff? Yes. Is it bad? No. Not at all. I sincerely dislike the new art style. I think the inclusion of things like health bars straight up goes against the original game's intention of instilling a sense of fear and mystery. I don't care much for Alex and really just think of her as edgy Yukiko. But I still prefer to play this version because of what it got right. Everyone having a character portrait makes the entire cast feel real and important. The additional character expressions do improve certain scenes by having characters actually react. The feel of movement is so much better, and exploring dungeons is overall a much more enjoyable experience. And even though I really wish the one game where they're canonically speaking English got a dub, I still love the added Japanese voice acting, especially for characters like Horkos, Mastema, and Bugaboo.
Bugaboo! Bugaboo!
I would rather play Redux, but I really won't fault anyone for preferring to play the original.
For me, the art direction of this game is impeccable, as is the case with any game that features artwork by Kazuma Kaneko in the Megami Tensei series. The character designs fit the characters perfectly, as well as the tone of the game. The human designs feel ripped straight out of an American action film, especially the protagonist. The new demon designs, on the other hand, perfectly juxtapose the contemporary/futuristic technology and armor of the humans by sticking true to the descriptions of the ancient gods. This clash of the old civilizations with the modern one in the Schwarzwelt perfectly encompasses the themes of the game visually. The themes of the Schwarzwelt manifesting humanity's sins and transgressions as the dungeons is a really unique and novel idea for the series at the time. Being able to fill such an oppressive atmosphere through a DS game with such limited visuals is really a testament to the visual direction and music composition. Meguro's music in this game is something that was more unique to what he had done previously with his work at Atlus, as he had typically done genres like soundscapes, electronic, rock, and pop. This game, on the other hand, goes the route of orchestral compositions with choirs, while still synthetic, delivers perfectly on the feel of a big-budget movie score. You can get so lost in the music of the game that you can sometimes forget the trumpet you're hearing is actually a synthesizer, even if just for a minute. The combat varies on the press-turn system introduced in Nocturne, but with the added mechanic of the alignment and demon co-op systems. While every mainline Megami Tensei game up until this point has had an alignment system in some form, none have really approached it in this way of integrating it directly into the combat of the game. There's more strategy in choosing your alignment, and it makes your story decisions matter more. As for the password system, some may have a problem with this mechanic as it could be exploited by players to make some broke demons, but ultimately it is up to the player to make that choice, and if they do choose to use it, it could make subsequent playthroughs to get through the other endings a lot quicker, and more interesting in my humble opinion. But I'm gonna have to agree with what Macca said before. This game can be very slow to get started, which seems to be the big deflector for many of my friends I try to get to play this game. But if you stick with it, you will not be disappointed for the very strange journey ahead. The characters are par for the course in a lot of mainline games. They are very flat, all things considered. There isn't anything particularly interesting or engaging about any of them. There are some humorous dialogue with Jimenez and Bugaboo, but outside of that, you won't really be feeling too strongly about any character. In fact, your choice of ending will probably largely depend on which alignment you agree with most instead of siding with a particular character. The game can meander a bit in the middle, which is to be expected for most RPGs. There are a few times when doing particular tasks in the story are pointless, and you know it, the characters know it, but the developers needed to pad out the playtime, so you have to do it. As for the changes made in Strange Journey Redux, I love the removal of the limitations on the sub-apps, as they make exploring the dungeons more exciting and fun. Now, some take issue with this and other quality of life additions, but I just see them as making it easier for newcomers to get into the game. The inclusion of the new route in the game with Alex and the Womb of Grief is a really fun route worth exploring if you're a fan of the original game. The route eventually leads to some interesting twists and turns, as well as some new and challenging boss fights, which are always my favorite part of any SMT game. The new ending as well feels in line with what the previous ending's messages were, and is perhaps one of my favorite endings in all of SMT. And outside of Demeter, I like most of Doi's new demon designs. However, the art style change is absolutely pointless and egregious. It ruins the whole tone of the game almost completely, making all the characters look like plastic anime figures as opposed to the muted colors and American action hero look of Akoneko's original designs. There was really no reason to change any of the existing character portraits. Now, people wrongly accuse Masayaki Doi, the new character designer for mainline SMT, for drawing these portraits. I've even been guilty of this, but it's actually a group of general artists called Atlus Design Team. Doi's contributions were strictly for the design of Alex, and the new demons which I mentioned before. Atlus Design Team are also responsible for the Diamond Realm redraws of the old protagonists for SMT4 Apocalypse.
Now then, what does old Atlus USAWest think of this game? I fucking love it. What I found so appealing about Strange Journey is how the story felt so unique and appealing right from the get-go. As soon as you begin, you understand the weight behind the Schwarzwelt, and you get to witness it firsthand through gameplay. Danger is always looming in every corner, and there is never a cutscene that doesn't make you think that something can go terribly wrong. This place holds your attention from the beginning, and it doesn't let it go until you're done with the game. The aforementioned originality can also be applied to the cast of characters on the surface. These are not your average JRPG teenagers looking to kill God with the power of friendship. No, these are just a bunch of adults trying to survive the horrible circumstances they find themselves in. Sure, the plot does evolve into something that can change the fate of the world, but I feel that this happens in a natural way. The characters themselves aren't the best I've ever seen in a game. In fact, I could argue some more time could have been spent with them. But just the fact that they are different and entertaining are enough to listen to everything they have to say. The soundtrack is one of the most incredible pieces of music I've ever had the pleasure to hear. It encapsulates a few particular feelings. The fear of the unknown, the always present danger, and just how little you are in comparison to the circumstances you find yourself in. And the battle themes always have this grandiose tone behind them. I felt that no matter what the context was, the music fit the situation perfectly well. In fact, when I first played the game, I will purposely let regular encounters last for at least a minute, just so I could listen to the entire battle theme. It's so good! The co-op system is a fantastic mechanic that plays a major role in how you build your teams. One of the things I love the most about Mega 10 games is how you're always rotating demons to get the upper hand. And the co-op system does a wonderful job in making you experiment with different demons from different alignments, which in turn forced me to use demons I never thought I'll end up loving. And thanks to the Schwarzwald's unpredictable nature, the dungeons have a different feel and tone from one another. This eases up the repetitious feelings they can have and adds suspense to not knowing what will come next. But of course, I got my issues with the game. This can be applied to almost every Mega 10 game, but Strange Journey, at least on the original DS release, is really fucking hard. That can be a positive if you love that kind of stuff, but the average player will find itself in literal hell as soon as they begin. Understanding every mechanic and exploiting every benefit they can give you is of utmost importance if you hope to stand a chance. But even if you understand the mechanics, you still have to deal with the dungeon design. Every sector has a lot of trial and error. The dark rooms in Carina, the conveyor belts in Delphinus, the teleporters in Eridanus. Macca and Rtyuiope said the pacing suffers around the second half, but I will argue that is because of the shit you have to deal with in the dungeons, rather than the events that happen. At the risk of getting some hate, I believe you can enjoy Strange Journey more if you have a guiding hand to help you traverse these areas. Don't feel bad if you do. You're not avoiding challenge. You're saving yourself frustration and time. Self-care, as they say. Finally, the final boss is a fucking asshole. I spent 10 hours grinding, getting the best armor, and building a super powerful team, only for her to still kill all of us in one turn. This pissed me off like you can't imagine. Like, yeah, a Strange Journey is hard, but even against the second hardest boss of the game, Ouroboros, there were viable ways to win that battle. This boss has no respect for anything you learned thus far, and the best way to kill her is to cheat with the password system. That wasn't rewarding, that was just very sad.
Listen, whether it's Redux or the original, Strange Journey should be a title any fan of dungeon crawling RPG should play, and especially if you're already a fan of Shin Megami Tensei. The story is the best in the series, the gameplay is the best the first-person style of SMT has to offer, and the sci-fi military aesthetic makes it easily the most unique game the franchise has to offer. As of the making of this video, the only ways to play the game is the original DS release and the Redux release on 3DS. Unlike other Atlus enhanced re-releases like Persona 5 Royal, it's not as clear-cut which you should play. There are pros and cons to either. My suggestion is to do your research and play the one that best appeals to you. So, I've noticed that the way I've ended these collabs has been pretty formulaic so far, where I thank the person for helping and then I end it off with a joke, but I don't want to write another ending like that, so go check out these guys' channel. They're really cool and good. Rtyuiope does all of the art for my channel, and Lewis obviously plays Atlus USAWest.
You can find me on Nith Grandbeard or Rtyuiope's Game Room here on YouTube. I promise I'll upload again at some point once my living situation gets a little better.
So, outside of being Atlus USAWest in this channel, I'm Luis from the Gemchel. I like to make reviews, essays, reacts, lists, whatever I'm in the mood for. So I think that makes my channel a bit unpredictable, and it gives it a certain degree of variety. Sometimes I can make a video on Mexican representation in video games, then later on another one on how much I love One Piece, and finally finish off with a Fire Emblem episode, which is one of my favorite franchises. So if you ever wanted to see a Mexican talk about video games in English, by all means check out my channel. I'll be very grateful for all the support.
So, I'm gonna go start playing SMT4. I'll see you guys whenever I get that done. Bye-bye. Mwah, I love you. Please like and subscribe.
Well, I think it's time for me to transform into a better and more powerful Atlus USAWest.
What the fuck?
Run!